Are you ready to level up? We are talking about the new Earth's birth. We've got lots of discussions, lots of indications that the Earth is changing and things are in motion. But are you? Are you actually in the process of ascending? Maybe you know it, maybe you don't. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and all the indications that you are moving into this higher frequency and activating what is known as your light body. The non-physical you is its own energetic body made of light. And that is what the fourth and fifth dimension is all about. So if you're new to my channel, welcome, welcome. I'm Sonia Choquette. I have been teaching spiritually for over 40 years. I've been working with a beautiful set of guides, especially now in this particular conversation. I'm working with my guides who are known as the emissaries of the third ray, second octave of love. They are beautiful light beings and teachers who have been with me for a long time. They've written a book through me many years ago, Soul Lessons and Soul Purpose. They have shown up and they're now stepping in because the Earth is changing. This is a scientific fact. Even the center of the Earth's frequency is changing. Our vibration on this planet is changing, and we humans are part of that process of change, and we are becoming a new type of human being, a multi-dimensional human, a human that has a third, fourth, fifth dimension, and we're playing up and down. So if you're new, I'm glad you're here. Let's talk about this, and you can check in with what's happening with you. Now, I have mentioned, if you are in the third dimension, you are really in dense matter. 3D consciousness is pretty ego-centered, and it's fear-based primarily, and you don't feel connected. You feel very isolated, disconnected, defensive, insecure, unsafe. And naturally, when you are in that consciousness, it clouds your perception. So as you look into the world, what you're seeing is the worst of things. And I was at a dinner party a couple of weeks ago in Chicago with friends, and at this beautiful, fabulous dinner party in this restaurant. The food was excellent. The conversation was fantastic. That everybody was in a high space. But as we started to settle down and get a little bit more into deeper conversation, what I noticed was that the top notes were festive, but just underneath there was a lot of negativity. The way it is, the world this, the politics that, the guns this, the crime that, the earth changes this, but it was negative, 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 negative. There was not a whole lot of deeper conversation that was terribly positive or uplifting. That's 3D. That's just how 3D perceives and experiences life. It's like, we're kind of screwed. Life is pretty negative, and we'll do the best we can and huddle together, but not a lot of creativity, and certainly not a lot of perception or awareness of what is good going on in the world. So then we move to fourth dimension. Now, this is when your body starts to activate and you start to grow and you start to see things differently. You start to reconsider that maybe the way I think things are is not really accurate. Maybe what I've been told or learned in middle school is not reality, and maybe I don't have to be so afraid, and maybe I don't have to be so defensive, and maybe I need to start being aware of what I am thinking and saying and perceiving. You get into the fourth dimension, you start to get curious. You start to ask questions. You start to listen. But here's an interesting and exciting thing that happens. You're not just listening with your ears. When you start activating your light body, when you start recognizing I'm more than physical, you start listening with your whole body. That is a very strong indication that you are activating and ascending to a higher frequency. So what are some other indications? Well, You're leaving 3D and going to 4D when you start believing and recognizing I am more than a physical being. You start becoming curious about intuition, clairvoyance, clairaudience. You actually start experiencing this. Your mind might fight back and say, you're crazy, and what do you think, and where's the data, and how do you know for sure? Because that mind, that ego, doesn't want to give up any power and control and wants to pull you back down to 3D. But just say to your ego, pump the brakes, pump the brakes. This is interesting. I'm curious. The other thing that you can tell when you get into the fourth dimension is you start to lighten up for real. First of all, some of the things that were really important to you stop being important. You stop being so interested in material things. You stop being completely obsessed over money, for example, or power or stuff or shopping, or you start to be more interested in creativity and what you might want to create. So you might ask, what are my creative talents? You might start wondering, what's my purpose in life? You might start becoming aware that there are spirit guides and angels, and maybe you never even contemplated that before, but it attracts your curiosity, attracts your attention. That's another big, big shift. And you know what happens? That fog over your view starts to lift, and you start to see and read and interpret your life with brand new eyes, with brand new perception, with brand new hearing ability. You start to have insight, clairvoyance. You start to have a depth of perception. You start to hear on a deeper level. This is clairaudience. You start to get guidance. This is really a big indication that your light body is activating, and you start to see solutions. You start to talk about solutions. You start to notice things in a new way that you never noticed before. Possibility, opportunity. You even get a bit excited. Then you go to the fifth dimension. Now, the fifth dimension of our ascension process is when you really start deeply connecting to that I am a spiritual being. You're no longer so body identified and so body trapped. You're no longer so fearful. You actually begin to, in that light body, you want to spread your wings. You want to expand. You want to travel. You even think about things as wild as astral travel. You start to dream and pay attention to your dreams, and you start to connect to seeing how we are all connected. You start to have some super interesting, exciting experiences. Now, here's a fourth dimension experience. I had a client who took a job in working with addicts and meth addicts and alcoholics, and she was 51 years old and very excited to get this job and wanted to help. She was interested in healing, and this was such an opportunity, good pay, good insurance. But when she started the job, it didn't take long. 2, 3, 4 weeks, she realized, I don't know if this is for me. This is pretty heavy-duty stuff, and I'm pretty sensitive. And she started to feel this strong impulse that though somebody should be doing this job and it was really service to humanity, maybe she wasn't quite wired for this job properly. Now, that's the fourth dimension saying this is not what we would call a vibrational match. This isn't activating your intuition. This is causing you stress and fear and body aches and pain. She started getting sick, back aches, her hips, her knees. All of a sudden, she went from 51 and full of life to feeling old. However, her ego pushed back. This is a good job. Who do you think you are? You can't quit. You got insurance. The pay is good. You're too old to find something else. People need you here. So that's the push-pull of third to fourth. And she stayed at the job and got sicker and sicker and sicker. 2 years in, she could barely walk. But her intuition, her light body self, her higher mind, and her fifth dimension self kept saying, quit. You'll get something else. We'll find you something that's a better match for your nature. So eventually when she called me, she said, "Is it my intuition?" I said, "Your intuition is working just fine. What is really holding you back?" And she said, "It's my fear of no money, and it's my fear of being too old to get another job." And we talked about that. That is a true passage of going from fourth to third to fourth to fifth. Is your ego mind just doesn't want to give up the ghost. And I said, "Well, now that you're talking about it, how do you feel?" She said, "I ought to quit. That's how I feel. I'm going to quit." And I said, "Well, let's talk about your fears. Let's address those. We're not going to be irresponsible. What is your higher self? What does your intuition say about that?" And she said, "My intuition says I should work at a spa. Never thought about, never crossed my mind." And I go, "Okay, good idea." I don't know what she's going to do, but she, all of a sudden, when she started going to the fourth and the fifth and not letting her ego mind, which I call your barking dog, not letting that ego mind hold her back, new places, new inspiration instantly started jumping in, and the fear instantly started easing. And I said, "Well, working in a spa is better than getting hip surgery. So let's do that. Let's check it out." And she said, "I never thought about it, but I bet I could get a job there." Now, this is where you get to read life more accurately. When you're in 3D, when you're in that negative state, you don't read life you just see it's like someone once said, when you're a hammer, all you see are nails. When you're in 3D, your hammer is trouble and all you see are problems. When you start to get to the fourth and you go to the fifth, you actually start to see opportunity, solution, connection, people who will help you, good ideas. That's the whole point. You start to read life more accurately. You start to see opportunity, you see solution, you see openings. Your intuition, which is whole body and not just your ears, starts to guide you. You start to see what your eyes couldn't see, what your obstacles blocked your eyes from seeing, which is open doors and green lights and opportunities and protection and all the good stuff. So check in with yourself. Am I actually wanting to level up? Am I wanting to live in a higher state? Is it occurring to me that I want to live a life of purpose? I want to read life accurately. I want to move out of this fear. I want to have healthy boundaries. I want to be tuned into what makes me happy. I want to see what's good in this world instead of just be afraid and negative and angry. I want that, because if you do, that means you're activating your light body already, and your ability to read life is kicking in. How exciting is that? That it's like your eyes open, your ears open, all of a sudden you're out of the, what I call bowling ball head, where you don't see anything but dark and it's heavy, and you come back into like Disney World. You start to see that there's a lot of beautiful things going on. So that's my message for this week. Check in. Is your light body activating? Are you activating to the fourth dimension? Is your ego trying to pull you back down? Is your intuition trying to pull you up? It's an interesting process, and it's an up and down experience. Give yourself plenty of heavy-duty love and support, and know that the earth is changing. We are changing. We are becoming lighter versions of ourselves, but we do have a choice. So one of the things that could help you, by the way, is I am releasing in November a fabulous journal called the Trust Your Vibes Guided Journal. And it's a 5-minute-a-day journal that if you work with it, it will give you the prompts to start pulling you into the light body, pulling you into this higher consciousness, pulling you into your intuition and your guided, expanded, creative self, pulling you out of the muck of the old habits in the old world. And it's 5 minutes a day. So go online, you can go to your bookstore, go online and look for this Trust Your Vibes, V-I-B-E-S. That's your vibration. That's that higher frequency. Trust Your Vibes Guided Journal. It's just coming out in November. I'm very excited. Thanks for tuning in. If you're new to my channel, I'm so glad you were here. If you liked it, please subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and tell your friends. We are leveling up together. We are activating our light bodies together. We are learning to read life accurately and see all the goodness in it together. All my love, everybody. See you on the next transmission.